You tell everyone you're ambitious, but you've been in the same dead-end job for 3 years because it's stable. You say you want love, but you keep swiping left on anyone who actually seems interested in a real relationship. You claim you're confident, but you haven't posted a photo without a filter in months. What if I told you that none of these decisions are really yours? What if the person you think you are is just a carefully constructed mask, and there is another version of you, your shadow, that has been pulling the strings this entire time without you even noticing? Right now, as you're watching this video, your shadow is probably whispering something. Maybe it is saying, "This doesn't apply to me," or "I am too smart to be controlled by my subconscious." That voice. That's exactly what we're talking about. That defensive little narrator that jumps in whenever someone gets too close to an uncomfortable truth. That is your shadow trying to protect you from seeing what is really going on. Here is the thing that is going to mess with your head. Every single rational decision you think you've made in the last month was probably influenced by fears you don't even know you have. Carl Jung called this hidden part of your personality the shadow, and it is not some mystical concept. It is the psychological equivalent of having a puppet master you've never seen controlling your choices while you convince yourself you're in charge. Your shadow is made up of all the parts of yourself you've decided are unacceptable. The anger you weren't allowed to express as a kid. The selfishness you were shamed for showing. The vulnerability you learned was dangerous. The neediness you were told made you weak. All of these rejected aspects didn't disappear. They went underground, and now they're running a shadow government in your psyche, making decisions to avoid ever feeling those uncomfortable emotions again. Let me paint you a picture. Sarah works in marketing but dreams of being a writer. She has got 3 chapters of a novel sitting on her laptop that she has untouched in 6 months. She tells everyone she's too busy to write, but she has for hours of screen time on TikTok every day. What's really happening? Her shadow is terrified of judgment and failure, so it keeps her busy with safe distractions. Every time she opens that document, her shadow whispers, "What if it's terrible?" And suddenly she needs to reorganize her entire closet instead. Sarah thinks she's being practical, but she is actually being controlled by a fear of criticism that she buried so deep she doesn't even recognize it anymore. Or take Mike, who's been single for 2 years and complains that all the good ones are taken. He goes on dating apps, matches with interesting women, but somehow always finds deal breakers. She laughs too loud. She's too into fitness. She asks too many questions about his feelings. Mike's shadow learned early that vulnerability equals pain. So it's become a master at finding reasons to reject people before they can reject him. He thinks he's being picky, but he's actually being protected by a fear of abandonment that's disguised as having high standards. The scary part: your shadow doesn't just influence who you date. It shapes your entire career, your friendships, even how you dress. That person who always wears black. Their shadow might be afraid of standing out and being judged. The friend who never stops talking. Their shadow is terrified of silence and what people might think if they're not constantly entertaining. The overachiever who can't relax. Their shadow learned that love is conditional on performance, so it drives them to exhaustion trying to earn approval they'll never feel they deserve. Your shadow is incredibly sophisticated. It doesn't just create obvious fears. It creates what psychologists call reaction formations. This is when you become obsessed with the exact opposite of what you're afraid of. The person who never stops talking about how much they love being alone. Their shadow is probably terrified of abandonment. The one who's always posting about how confident they are. Their shadow is likely drowning in insecurity, the friend who judges everyone for being fake. Their shadow is probably terrified that people will discover they're not as authentic as they pretend to be. Think about the last time you had a strong, immediate dislike of someone you barely knew. That gut reaction, that instant something about them just rubs me the wrong way feeling. That is often your shadow recognizing something in them that you've rejected in yourself. Jung called this projection, and it is like your shadow holds up a mirror and shows you all the parts of yourself you don't want to acknowledge. That person who annoys you because they're too needy, your shadow is probably protecting you from your own neediness, the colleague you can't stand because they're so fake. Your shadow might be hiding your own tendency to put on masks. Here's where it gets really wild. Your shadow doesn't just protect you from feeling bad. It protects you from feeling too good. Ever notice how you sabotage yourself right when things start going well? You're finally eating healthy and exercising, then you binge eat an entire pizza. You're building momentum in your business, then you procrastinate on the most important projects. You meet someone amazing who actually likes you, then you start picking fights or pulling away. That is your shadow saying, "This is too good to be true," or "I don't deserve this," and creating chaos to bring you back to what feels familiar. Even if familiar feels terrible. The shadow loves comfort zones because comfort zones are predictable. Your shadow would rather keep you miserable in a situation it understands than risk the unknown, even if the unknown could be incredible. It is like having an overprotective parent living in your head who thinks the best way to keep you safe is to keep you small. But here's the plot twist. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's actually trying to protect you. It's just using outdated information. The parts of yourself you rejected weren't bad. They were just inconvenient or unsafe in your original environment. Maybe you learned to hide your anger because explosive emotions weren't allowed in your house. Maybe you buried your ambition because dreaming big was seen as getting above yourself in your family. Maybe you rejected your sensitivity because it made you a target for bullying. Your shadow is like a time capsule from your childhood, still trying to protect you from threats that no longer exist. The problem is, those old protection strategies are now limiting your adult life. The anger you buried might contain important boundary-setting energy. The selfishness you rejected might hold healthy self-advocacy. The vulnerability you fear might be the key to real intimacy. The first step to reclaiming your life from your shadow is simply noticing when it's driving. Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself about why you can't do things. I'm not creative enough to start that project. I'm too old to change careers. I'm not attractive enough to date someone like that. These aren't facts. They're shadow strategies designed to keep you in familiar territory. Notice your strong reactions to other people. What qualities immediately trigger judgment or irritation in you? Those are probably aspects of your own shadow that you haven't integrated yet. Instead of judging those people, get curious. What would it mean if you allowed yourself to have that quality too? Start having conversations with your shadow instead of being controlled by it. When you feel that familiar fear or resistance come up, instead of automatically obeying it or fighting it, try asking, what are you trying to protect me from? Sometimes just acknowledging your shadow's concerns can take away its power to control you unconsciously. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow. That is impossible and would actually make you less human. The goal is integration. It's acknowledging all parts of yourself, even the ones you don't like, and making conscious choices about how to express them in healthy ways. It's recognizing that you're not just the shiny, acceptable version of yourself you present to the world. You're also the messy, complicated, sometimes ugly parts that make you fully human. Your shadow will always be there, but it doesn't have to be in the driver's seat. Once you start seeing it clearly, you can choose whether to follow its guidance or gently redirect towards something more aligned with who you want to become. After all, the most powerful person isn't someone who has eliminated their darkness. It is someone who has learned to dance with it instead of being controlled by it.